Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide. With Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, I am 22 minutes away from Cowboys AT&T Stadium, and I haven't gone there to boo them yet. So I need that on my list while I'm here in Dallas. I've had some really good Dallas barbecue, but how are you doing?
Well, so I know we hate the Cowboys, but I kind of feel bad for them. Like, there's no sense in booing them. They're probably booing themselves, right? Being Cowboys fans tough enough. Come on, man. No, I'm doing great. I'm not eating as delicious barbecue as you are, but I had a pretty great day today, Greg, and we're going to be talking about I woke up to some great news. I had a little pep in my step. I didn't even need a coffee. Didn't even need it. I woke up and was ready to rock. So I've been excited knowing that you were going to be on the show tonight because it was up in the air because you were traveling. But
you never know this hotel internet. You never know.
As soon as I saw that news this morning, I was like, nah, Greg's going to be on the show. So everything's going to be back to normal and we're going to be rolling tonight. So I'm super excited to have you here with us. And we have a really fun guest after we get through some of this stuff.
Before we get into all the fun, we want to talk about our friends over at bookseats.com. They've been awesome to us. We're so excited. We actually started to look now at the hotel room we're going to be put up at when we're in Vegas, going there for the draft, and got all of our flight information, and it's going to be so cool. So when you guys are looking for any of your trips, any of your places you want to go, they can take care of you and any group, be able to go. You can check out seats for games, for concerts, for any event that you have going on, hotel packages, flight packages, any mismatch of anything that you want to be able to put together. You can go on to bookseats.com, be able to check it out. They'll get you all kinds of options to be able to go wherever you want to go for all the best events and everything that you have going. We're so excited to be able to work with them. And I actually think we're going to get to meet the guys from bookseats.com while we're out in Vegas. So it's going to be fantastic. We're really pumped, but make sure you check them out. We're really excited to be able to work with them and be able to share even more about them as we get into things like schedule release and all the cool stuff that we get planned for.
Yeah, I can't wait for schedule release. Maybe some Los Angeles flights week one, maybe. We'll see if that happens. But there's going to be some fun road trip games this year for sure. And I'm getting to the point where I want to hit all the stadiums. I keep telling my wife I want to get to all the different stadiums and check them off my box. So I'm excited for the schedule release and check out Book Seats, and maybe they can help me with that process of starting to check off some stadiums off my list.
I like it. But obviously people are here for a reason. And it's because today, Brandon Beane got it done. Stefon Diggs, 6-year, $124 million extension. The new money, it sounds like it's 4 years, $96 million, and up to $104 million additional. So you add that into the 2 years he already had, it gives you a 6-year deal for $124 million. So excited. Obviously, I expect there to be a lot of things like we talked about when Josh Allen got extended and the Von Miller contract. 6 years is a very strategic number. The reason they did that is they can give him a signing bonus this year and have another guaranteed option bonus next year, both of which will prorate fully over 5 years, spread it out. So, based on my math, I think we're going to save some money this year, and it's going to reduce his number next year. I'll get into that in a minute, but what was your initial reaction? I was literally just waking up. It had already happened maybe.
Yeah, you were up earlier than you normally are over.
Yeah, especially being in a later time zone. I was up very early.
Yeah, I was surprised. I tweeted it out. I was like, wait till Greg wakes up and sees this. And I saw you liked it. I was like, wait a minute. What is this guy doing? I was ecstatic because honestly, with 2 years left on his deal, I really thought this was a spring next year conversation that we were going to have. Just that sort of precedent that Brandon Beane has had really going into this, that he wasn't going to renegotiate that until he had to. And that was kind of the conversation I was having with people when they were talking about the possibility of a trade. Obviously, we heard that interview with Doug Whaley where he brought up the idea that the Bills aren't going to be able to afford him and they might have to trade him. And I was like, okay, maybe that's a possibility. Maybe that's a 10% possibility that ends up, but that's a next year conversation. It's not a this year conversation. And I think the likelihood that they were working on an extension was more likely than that this year, but I still thought if he doesn't have to do it for any reason of adding talent, adding a Stefon Gilmore, adding somebody like that, then there's no reason to rush it, right? And we had heard Brandon saying, at least to the public, that they hadn't been in conversations, hadn't been in negotiations, which I don't know that I totally believe that they hadn't already been when he said. I think those conversations probably were happening. But there was no indication from Stefon Gilmore's side or Brandon Beane's side. It was all sort of speculative of people on Twitter that, they weren't going to be able to afford him or that there was something wasn't going to get worked out. But really early in the morning, we see this get worked out. I was super excited, man. We know Josh Allen has a say on this roster, and I'm certain that he was pounding the table to get this done and keep Stefon Diggs here long term for him and for this team. The Super Bowl window is wide open, locked and loaded, ready to win a Super Bowl right now. And some of the comments I've seen, one thing I will say is people are saying, this looks like a really good deal in terms of like a discount, and it's hard for me to necessarily say it's a discount in comparison to what Tyreek Hill got in his average money, right? It's like 10 million less average, but the guy got paid. Like he's paid as an elite wide receiver in the NFL. He didn't take a huge steep deal to stay in Buffalo. He became a very rich man today. Yeah. There's no special sweetheart discount going on here.
Yeah. We talked about that, pre-show, and my comment was yes, he didn't force Beane's hand to make him he didn't get Bean super pay greedy. Him more. Yeah. He could have said, hey, no, you have to pay me more than Devontae Adams or Stefon Diggs or Tyreek Hill. But what he did do is Stefon Diggs is paid more than any receiver in NFL history as of March of this year.
Yes.
So he still got paid a ton of money to be able to go do that. So, we're going through it. Yeah, as soon as you dare Bean not to be able to do something, he figures out a way to do it. So
it's the Josh Allen effect, right? Every time the media says Josh can't throw in the cold, can't do this, everyone's saying Bean can't land a splash free agent. Boom, Von Miller can't get Diggs done. Boom, Stefon Diggs. So keep telling Bean the stuff he can't do, and we'll see.
So let me get nerdy for a quick second here. Obviously, we don't know a lot of details on the contract yet. But what we do know is there is a $21.5 million signing bonus. What I know from the previous contract was he had a $17.9 million cap hit, but only 12.5 of that was salary. So almost $5 million and change of that was other previous restructures and signing bonuses. We can't do anything about that. So that $5.5 million is still there. Out of the 12.5, my guess is that they're going to take 11.5 of that, reduce his salary down to $1 million, take 11.5 of that, and that's part of the signing bonus. So he's getting that money now plus 10 million more because it's a $21.5 million signing bonus. That means that you split that up over 5 years of the deal. That's $4.3 million. So then you add the $1 million salary, the $4.3 million proration of the signing bonus, you have $5.3 million. You add on the other chunk that was already there. That 5.3 comes out of the 12.5 that was there. I think they can save about 7.2. I know it's a lot of math.
Honestly, when you're just going through that, I'm nodding, but I just want you to tell me once you tell me what it means, then I'll be happy.
All those things together, the reduction from the overall salary, we can't do anything about the other chunk.
Right.
So it's still going to be in my mind. I still think we're going to have about a $10 million cap hit, 10.5-ish, which means my estimate is that we're going to have a cap savings of 7.2 million. It could be as little as 5 million. It could be as much as 9 million. That's the range that he could play with. My estimate is that it's going to be 7.2 million in cap space that's created by doing this. So 7.2 million is on one side, that's enough for the rest of the year. That's all the draft picks. That's a couple more little small signings and enough money to work with that's enough money to work with through the season for all the, hey, just in case things you need to do. It could be enough to do a cornerback signing if they want to. But my estimate is with that 7.2 million in cap savings, again, maybe between 5 and 9 million, somewhere in that range. It's as much as they want to be able to go. If anyone goes on Spot Track, and you're going to see this on Twitter, people are misunderstanding. Right now, they've blanked out the Stefon Diggs contract. So on Spot Track at the moment, it looks like we have $18 million in cap space because they removed Stefon Diggs' $17.9 million cap hold. They haven't added any of it back in.
Right.
My estimate is they're going to add back in about $10.5 million, and we're going to be left with about $7.5 million in cap space. So we'll see if that comes out, but I'd guess that's pretty close to the number we're going to get. So once we get the updated numbers, they'll add that back in, and we'll see about $7.5 million in cap space, which is either enough to go get ourselves a cornerback if we want, and then we'd have to do another restructure to sign draft picks and to go through the season. Or if we don't do anything else, we now have enough money to go through the rest of the season.
Good to go. Yeah, no, I hope it's the first thing you said, because I think we've both been pounding the table that, yeah, we want to draft a cornerback, but we would really like to have a veteran cornerback in the room. And so maybe it's not the high end. Maybe it's not a Stephon Gilmore where you really have to stress that.
Or even a Bryce Callahan.
Yeah, or a Callahan. Maybe it's not one of those guys. Maybe it's Steven Nelson. You get on a real cheapo deal, or Hayden, a guy that I don't necessarily love, but maybe you can get in on a cheapo deal here. So I hope that's the path to saving a little bit of money here to go into the draft really truly looking best player available, not feeling forced to take a cornerback in that first round. But some of the things I want to talk about Stefon Diggs, I put out a tweet earlier, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Greg. I've been saying a long time. I said it on the show earlier. I think obviously Josh Allen's the best quarterback to ever wear a Buffalo Bills uniform. I don't even want to hear a debate about it. Honestly, I'm not really interested in a debate on that. I'll hear a debate on this one, but I believe Stefon Diggs is the best wide receiver to ever wear a Buffalo Bills uniform. And I'm not saying this in the sense that longevity, personal stats as a Buffalo Bill. I'm saying pure wide receiver ability, athleticism, all these things. I've never seen a guy do what Stefon Diggs does to wear a Buffalo Bills uniform and dominate in the way that he does. And when you look at his stats in the 2 years as a Bill, he's 14th overall already in yards with 2,760 yards. He's first in yards per game with 83.6. The next closest is 17 yards per game behind him. That was Sammy Watkins, by the way, another guy that only had 2 years.
You could let me guess for a day, and I wouldn't have guessed Sammy Watkins was
right.
second.
Yeah, he was pretty productive here in Buffalo. I think people don't realize how productive he was in that time. He's also 15th in touchdowns with 18. And when you look at the people ahead of him on these lists, they're 10, 12-year careers here in Buffalo. If he even finishes out this contract, he's really going to rise up that list pretty quickly, especially with how the game is today and obviously playing with Josh Allen and this type of offense. But more importantly, when you look at him compared to his peers in terms of what type of guy he is and what he commands, I think targets is a really good way to look at a receiver and what they mean to their team and their offense. In the last 2 years, this was a conversation we had. Our friend Nate Geary was, mad that he wasn't getting the type of targets we believed Stefon Diggs received. But when you look over the last 2 years, Stefon Diggs and Devontae Adams are really the only two guys that have been in the top 5 over the last 2 years in targets per game. And in 2020, he had 10.4 targets per game. That was good for third in the NFL. That was behind Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen, who were 10.6 and 10.5. I mean, that's how close of a margin it is. That's elite wide receiver. You're force feeding this guy the ball at every opportunity you can. In 2021, it dropped to 9.6, which we saw a drop in his production overall, but we also saw the ball spread into guys like Dawson Knox. We even saw Singletary come on a little bit at the end of the year. Emmanuel Sanders took some in the beginning. Gabe took some at the end. But that was still good for 5th in the NFL with Cooper Kupp, who had a ridiculous season. Deontay Johnson, which was weirdly 2nd in targets. But
a lot of dump offs by Ben.
Seriously, and he didn't catch all of them. That's for sure. And then Adams was up there again, and Justin Jefferson. So this guy, Stefon Diggs, is at the most elite level in the NFL, and the Bills treat him that way. So bringing him back, like if you don't bring this guy back, I know people love the idea of Gabe Davis, and maybe he can eventually also be that number one wide receiver. And we heard Emmanuel Sanders just bring some praise on him.
Pretty serious praise.
Fantastic. Yeah. If he turns out to be another guy that's that type of receiver. But if you pull those targets out of Buffalo, like this offense is just completely different. And what that does, those targets, we saw it in that Kansas City game. What allowed Gabe Davis to have that game that we all praise him for is the gravity of a player like Stefon Diggs on the field. Trying to remove those 10 targets a game from Stefon Diggs opens up so much for the rest of this team. So Josh Allen's the number one guy on this team. He's the captain. He's the best. He's the quarterback position. He's everything. But the number 2 guy on this team is Stefon Diggs. So I'm glad that they've paired them up and let's roll. I couldn't be more happy about this deal getting done.
So I think that some people would see what you said as a crazy hot take, and it's not, because no one's saying that Andre Reed didn't accomplish more in a Bills uniform than Stefon Diggs accomplished. But what Stefon Diggs is doing currently in a Bills uniform is greater and more impressive than anyone has ever done in any single season as a Bills player. I know someone in the chat brought up T.O. T.O. is a greater overall receiver. Accomplishment-wise, he's accomplished more than anyone that we've had, but not while he was a Bill. Yeah. What Stefon Diggs has done while he's a Bill, I think, is the most impressive thing we've ever seen as a wide receiver. And that obviously we hope that he stays now long enough with these 6 more years that he can get close to where he's also in line historically with Andre Reed. But I think that's
Eric Moulds is a good one that people bring that up a lot of the time. Eric Moulds,
but I do think there in those 3.
I still do think even if you put Eric Moulds in the modern NFL, I think Stefon Diggs would be a better wide receiver overall. I think
I think Moulds would be like we see AJ Brown and guys like that. He'd still be a dominant physical presence.
And that's my point. So a lot of people will come at me and say, well, the modern NFL, those stats are inflated. They're going to be better stats and stuff like that. But Stefon Diggs is still at the top of all those stats in this
the
modern
inflated
NFL.
Numbers.
Correct. He is at the elite level, even with the inflated. It would be one thing if he was a top 15 wide receiver in all these statistics. And then in Buffalo Bills stats, he was rising up, but he's a top in the most inflated time in passing history. He's at that elite level now. And so I think that there's a case to be made for him to be that best wide receiver in Bills history.
So a couple quick things before we switch over to our main topic for the night and bring our awesome guest on. A couple questions people asked: what things could the Bills do to create more cap space? One is an extension for Jordan Poyer. That's obviously an option. An extension for Tremaine Edmonds, which I know some people are not all that excited about, but that's another option they could do to create cap space. They could also do restructures for Trey White, Deion Dawkins, and Josh Allen. Those restructures would create $15.4 million. So they have all the flexibility they want. Whatever they want to do, they can. But those are mainly the 5 tools they have. Would be an extension for Poyer or Edmonds, and then restructures for Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, or Deion Dawkins and Trey White. They could create all the cap space they need for any other move that they want to do. And one other small piece, we did see the official return of Tywan Jones to be able to add it back. So obviously, I think the contract's going to be structured in a way that he's not guaranteed a roster spot, but we saw he was still playing at a very high level to be able to go through what the guys accomplished. So I'm so happy to have him back. Another great leader from a special team standpoint. And without further ado, as we go into what we talked about last week and our guest for tonight, we are bringing on our man, Kendall Mirsky. Kendall, how are we doing, sir?
Good, great. Just got off this guy's coverage talking about the draft, so I feel like I'm all primed up to just keep it rolling.
No, we appreciate it, man. It's awesome. We appreciate you fitting us in, and I know you've been doing a great job jumping on all kinds of different shows. So anybody who isn't following Kendall, make sure you check him out. He flips around his Twitter handle. It's very confusing. He's at Mirsky Kendall, but make sure he's an awesome follow. He's on a ton of our shows here on the channel and does a great job specifically with the draft. So for anyone who didn't get a chance to see last week, Aaron and I went through, and at no surprise, we talked about some other sneaky needs that were outside of there that maybe we'll sprinkle into the end of the show. But our top draft priorities are just like just about everybody else: cornerback, wide receiver, interior offensive line, and
punter.
Yeah, and obviously punter. So our plan for tonight was we'll go through each of those top positions and ask who your top guys are at there, and you can talk about whether it's overall prospects, but most likely specifically for the Bills, do you think are the right fits that we would want to go after, and whether we can get them or not is another topic. And then we'll just kind of ask about some of the guys we're interested in or guys that maybe we didn't see as a top option, and we'll go through that route. That sound good?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. Beautiful.
Yeah, so let's get right into it because this one's obviously the hot topic on Twitter. Everyone, especially with being not addressing this in free agency yet, as we alluded to earlier, but then losing
I'll
Levi.
go refresh Twitter and see.
Yeah, right. It might be happening right now. You never know. And then losing Levi Wallace, which isn't the biggest loss in the world, but then when you look at the Trey White injury, that possibly lingering, nobody really knows how long that's going to linger, and then you really just have Dane Jackson at least to start the season here. So I think people are starting to get antsy with that not being addressed, and there's a lot of sort of, geez, we need to really, this has to be the number one top priority in round one. We got to walk away with the top corner. Or when you hear the conversations about, Bills looking to move on from some guys to trade up, that everybody's assuming that that's got to be for corner. So normally I wouldn't talk about the guys at these other positions that are in the top of the draft, but in a scenario where there's a trade up, what do you think about those top guys? And who would be the guy that you're trading up for at the cornerback position in the top of the draft?
Personally, for me, it's Sauce, and I think a lot of people are in that boat too, whether it's the name or any other reason.
I mean, I can't lie. It is an awesome nickname.
There's a lot of really good, if you just type Sauce into the GIFs on Twitter, there's a lot of good GIFs for Sauce.
Exactly. And that's a huge thing.
Hot sauce, buffalo sauce. It goes along with so many things that we do.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not someone who's necessarily pushing for that, but obviously with the smoky rumor about, trading a veteran and all that stuff, Bills being aggressive to move up in the draft, it piques my interest. Yeah, maybe the Bills do want to move up in the draft and they want to go ahead and get that corner opposite of Trey White. And maybe, if they're going to do it for Sauce, it's not going to be with a guy like Epinesa or Zach Moss. It's going to require Tremaine Edmonds. And if you do that, then you're going to have to go ahead and get Sauce, and then you're probably going to have to trade up again to be comfortable with whoever the Tremaine Edmonds replacement is. That's a rookie. So it's pretty expensive in my mind to do that. But if it were to happen, it's Sauce. I love the versatility in his game. Really long. I say he has sufficient play strength because I don't think he's grown into his body fully yet. He's kind of like slender framed. But I think obviously with the Bills' strength and conditioning stuff, I think he would grow into that perfectly fine. And he plays really strong in press coverage. So I really like the idea of someone that could operate on the one side of a 3-by-1 set for the offense. And he's the man corner, essentially. He's in press. He allows that safety, whoever's going to get on the high side of him, extra time to get over top of him because he's pressing the wide receiver, making sure they don't get a clean snap off the line of scrimmage. So I love the idea of that. He's got great reactive athleticism and fantastic ball skills. Hasn't allowed a touchdown in his college career. So you love to hear that kind of stuff. So
that's an insane stat. That's just incredible.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I think people will definitely talk about like level of competition when you talk about Sauce, but not allowing a touchdown period.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And that's incredible.
And so
one other one while we're on Sauce, one other one I saw was he allowed one catch over 10 yards the entire season.
This year, yeah, I believe that. I charted Cincinnati for SIS, so I saw every single Sauce and Kobe Bryant snap this year, and yeah, I believe it. Dude didn't allow a lot. He didn't get targeted a lot. He's sticky. He doesn't allow a lot of separation.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I like Sauce, and I actually, my favorite thing about him is the level of confidence this guy has when he comes on Twitter. He's like, "I'm the best player in the draft. I'm going to be the number one corner." Like, I love that type of stuff. So sign me up for if you're going to make a massive
cornerback
deal.
Position.
Absolutely, you got to have that confidence. But so one thing I saw here in the chats that you only trade up for Stingley or Sauce. I don't know that that's true. I think there's a scenario where a more affordable trade up is Booth being available, maybe not getting to 25. We saw Todd McShay's draft here this week where he was there at 25. I haven't seen a lot of that and big boards and all this stuff. None of this matters, right? But in where the draft research that I'm doing, I'm not seeing a lot of Booth getting to 25, but he might be in a range where
18,
the trade
19, 20.
Totally, where it's not, hey, we have to really sell out to go get this guy, but we don't want to, get him through these next 6 picks. We want to go make sure we can go up and get him. Is that a more realistic trade up in the first round if he starts to fall into that 19, 20 area?
110%. He's someone that I'm realistically hoping drops to 25 because of the recent injury that he's had and the surgery that he's having and the fact that he hasn't tested yet, all of this stuff. It's reasons that he or like a Trent McDuffie could fall because Trent McDuffie's half an inch shorter with his arms than 30 inches, whatever it is. So those guys are guys that could slip to 19, 20, and the Bills could trade up. And in that scenario, like you said, it's a lot more affordable because that's a scenario where you could package pick 25 and Zach Moss, pick 25 and AJ Epinesa, and you can move up, like very feasibly move up.
Yeah, a couple
and get Andrew Booth. So that's where I love that. I'm hoping he gets 25 and you don't have to part ways with assets like that. But I think he's someone where he offers that scheme versatility. He has incredible athleticism on tape, and he's functions a lot in zone in Clemson, and they run a lot of like complicated zone principles over there. So I'm confident that he could then translate that to what the Bills do in their zone stuff. But the athleticism that you see, although he doesn't do a lot of man type stuff at Clemson, it translates to what he could do in man if he gets coached up. If he were even a bad man corner,
Sure.
He's got all the athletic traits in the world to be good in man. So I like the scheme versatility that he offers. And he's incredibly physical when it comes to fighting downhill and run support, sometimes like too physical to a fault, kind of like Matt Milano-esque where he misses tackles because he's just flying around.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's very similar to that, but you just kind of coach that up and tell him to play within himself a little bit, and that stuff could go away. So I love the body of work that Andrew Booth Jr. provides.
Before I let Greg ask any cornerback questions, I'm going to just keep stealing the podium here. But you mentioned Trent McDuffie, and this is one I really want your opinion on because I try not to get too caught up in things like arm size, and I try not to be too rigid. One of my things is, not being rigid, not boxing myself into ideas, but I'm having a really hard time when I do look at the success of corners and arm length, and there is an association. And I have a tough time giving up an asset of 25 to a guy who would be an anomaly if he came in and was an outside corner in the NFL with the lack of arm size. If he was successful and made many Pro Bowls and became the guy that you would want to get at the 25th pick, similar to where we picked Trey White, right? Like you want to get a guy that is at that sort of level. I have a tough time banking on an anomaly to happen, even though I like his play. When I watch him, I'm like, this is a guy that really checks a lot of boxes for what I would want in a Bills cornerback. But then I see the arm length. Can you talk me out of that being a problem and that this guy can overcome that and be that anomaly? Or am I just going to have to write him off?
So full transparency, I've only watched one full game on Trent McDuffie, so I can't speak to him specifically, but I could speak to Roger McCreary, and it's the same
argument. Yeah.
It's the same theory, really.
I feel better about that in the second round, though, with McCreary, if I was going to go.
Exactly. And he's got like a whole inch and a half shorter arms than McDuffie, so I could understand why he would fall even further. But so I'll speak to it in the theory. And the theory is there are so many ways to mitigate being short-armed, especially in a zone coverage scheme like the Bills have. Obviously, you want longer arms because it minimizes passing windows and it mitigates if you are slower to make reads, like you have that extra length to go ahead and close that passing window, make a tip on the ball, whatever it is. But there's so many ways around that where if you're making a fast read, you're a step earlier on that half an inch on your arm doesn't really matter. If you're in man, if your reactive athleticism is making up for that shortness of your arm, it doesn't matter. If you have a mirror match ability with that wide receiver where, he's making a quick shimmy move and you don't buy it and you're right on him, right in his hip pocket, that short arm doesn't even come into play. So there's multiple ways to mitigate the risk of having a short arm or two short arms. But either way, I would
assume both of them are short.
Who knows? I mean, people have weird lengths. People have suits custom made.
Yeah. You're making me feel better. Just like all the women in my life have told me, size doesn't matter.
It doesn't, man.
Yeah. You can make up for it in many other ways.
Thanks, man.
I'm 5'6", so I got to do everything I can. No, but I have no problems with it, especially when you watch the tape. I love the tape on McDuffie, but I need to do more of a deeper dive on that. And then when you see it with McCreary, it's like the reactive athleticism piece is really the piece that you take away with how you mitigate that arm length. Like, if you're sticky and you're in that guy's hip pocket, it's just going to take a perfect throw and catch to beat you. And if that's what it takes to beat you, you got to tip your cap. And you can't blame it on short arms. You just blame it on the offense being better that play. It's execution based. You don't blame it on those kind of inadequacies. So I think it's understandable. You don't want to bet on anomalies, like you said,
right?
But you also don't want to pass on a dude who has outstanding tape like Roger McCreary does, just because his arms are 2 inches shorter, and people are comping him to Trey White. Like the way he moves, the way he reads things, the way he processes, it's very Trey White-esque. But he's got shorter arms, and you just can't deny that. Real
quick, that comment about Tyrannosaurus. So my kid's super into dinos. That's a false statement. That's fake news. Tyrannosaurus Rex was not the king of the dinosaurs. They were like scavengers. They were like vultures of dinosaurs. They're not as cool as Jurassic World makes you believe they are. Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is the guy. Just
that's
a
where
little
it's at.
The more you know.
That was the real king.
Yeah.
So, Kendall, I know a couple names that people brought up here before we switch to some other positions, whether it's, is there the guy like Kyler Gordon, or we didn't really get into Derek Stingley Jr., which is one that if we're going to see, someone fall, I know, people were expecting Christian Fulton to be a top, pick, and he started to fall, we don't know how teams are going to react to the last 2 years of Derek Stingley versus, 20. If I know I heard it on another show, I think it was with Robert Mays, was talking about if the draft happened in the other order and we just saw the exact same seasons, but the 2021 season was 2019 and Derek Stingley's 2019 was 2021, he'd be like a top 3 pick, might be the number 1 overall pick.
Yep.
And how do you, as you've gone through this in the couple of years you've been doing this, how do you manage that in your mind when you've seen elite level, the very top level of performance, and then it doesn't hold up afterwards?
It's definitely a piece of the puzzle, but you also have to use the fact that he was so successful when he was even younger, and he was at an even bigger disadvantage than he was when he got older. And I think part of that is also the injury piece. And I think that is definitely a big portion of, why he could fall, the injury piece. And a lot of people are, slandering his name on behavioral type of stuff and all that. I mean, we don't get the peek behind the scenes to know him as the person, but to me, it's definitely the fact that you want to see the upward trajectory through college, and then the character piece, you want it to see all align as you get closer to the draft. And the fact that it isn't is definitely a reason he could slip. But for me personally, when you see a dude so successful and show the traits that he has at a young age in the SEC with his dominance, you shouldn't overlook that or overthink that, because those rough edges, they can be refined, they can be polished out. So
that 40 looked nice today.
And he ran really, really well today. So you can't question too many things like that. You start getting in your own way with the draft process. Sometimes you got to make it simpler than it really is and try to isolate some of those variables.
He'd be my guy that if he starts to fall, Sauce is not going to fall. He's just not. Like, don't get me wrong. I'd love to find a way to go get him. I think we'd have to trade to like 5, and trade to 5, you still might not get him because he might go earlier than that. There's a chance that Stingley falls a little bit, that you see Stingley fall enough where it would be worth trying to go to 14 or 15 or somewhere in that area where it would be worth trying to go get him. And that I think if you could have that kind of guy in this kind of scheme, it would be exciting. One last cornerback question before we switch. Out of the guys in that next year, whether it's Kyer Earlum, I've heard him asked about in the chat, or Kyler Gordon, is there another guy that you think is worth that pick at 25?
I'm personally lower on Kyer Elam, and a lot of it has to do
Prohaska was as well.
Yeah, we both see eye to eye on that, and a lot of it has to do with him and run support, because he has a frame where he would operate as a strong press man corner who's good in run support and physical at the point of attack, whether it's meeting a blocker or making a tackle. But in that Alabama game and a couple other times in some other games, he was just whiffing on tackles. And that's not something you want to see with a guy with his frame. But there are other areas of his game that are good. Like he is an exceptional athlete. And the fact that he can recover out of poor footwork, getting flat-footed in his press technique, and then just recover with it because of his athleticism, like that's really encouraging. But at the same token, you don't want to depend on recovery athleticism at the next level when everyone's more athletic than what they were at the college level. So I have reservations in that regard for Kyer Elam. I personally, he's my cornerback 7, and he's right behind.
Is that something you think can be coached up at the next level, or is that something that you think the instincts are lacking and might be just a gap in his game?
I think it could be coached up, but it's not something I want to take a risk on personally, because there were other things in his game where it seemed like he was almost overconfident in his athleticism, where he was okay with being technically wrong at the jump, at the point of the snap, where he just relied so much on his athleticism. And you talked about it, Aaron, with Sauce and his confidence. Like, there is a tipping point to being too confident at the cornerback position. Like, you want to have mental toughness where you allow a 50-yard completion, and as Ted Lasso says, be a goldfish. Just forget it, you know?
I love that reference. Thank you.
But you don't want to be overconfident. You don't want to be overconfident to the point where you think you're better than everyone else, to the point where you can be wrong and still make it right every single time. And I think there's a little bit too much of that in Kyer Elam's game, but I'm not going to sit here and write him off. I still think he could be picked in the first round. I personally don't want him to be picked by the Bills in the first round.
I do have, before we move on to the next position, Greg, I have 2 more cornerback questions for you, because I'm intrigued with this cornerback race. So I'd seen the tweet this week about how this wasn't that deep when you get past the first couple of guys, but I actually couldn't disagree more. I actually, if you're the Buffalo Bills and you're in need of a cornerback, this is a great draft, in my opinion, to be in need of a corner, where even if you miss in this first round, there's some other options, but sort of maybe in the first round, it might be a trade up in the second round type thing. But our guy, Joe Marino, had done a mock draft recently where he took Tariq Woolen in the first round, and it raised a lot of eyebrows and got a lot of people thinking about him. Where do you see him, and would that be a first round thing, or would that be maybe trade up into the second round a little bit and come get that guy? Where's he at for you? And then I have a follow-up after that.
I don't have tape on UTSA, which sucks.
Yeah, that's tough, right?
I only watched him when I was charting random games for SIS, and I was just charting UTSA games. So I didn't have like a watchful eye on Woolen, but I definitely remember his name popping. The thing with him, in theory, it's more a theory-based thing for me when I'm answering this. It's the betting on traits thing that Brandon Beane has done.
They love it.
You know, they've done it multiple times, pretty much ever since like
Ed Oliver.
Ever since the Josh Allen draft, it hasn't stopped.
Right.
So I can't deny that, but at the same time, like, I guess the combine was the best showcase of this for me. You could see the tight hips with him and just kind of like some clunky movements with him. But at the same time, you see how he tests and all those numbers and the athleticism and all that eye-popping stuff. So there's traits to work with, but I'm personally not in a boat where I'm going to take a chance on those traits in the first round. Trading up on those traits in the second round is something we've seen Brandon Beane do, and that's something I'd be much more comfortable with, especially if he's comfortable with the body of work that he provides on tape and it being a second round pick. I think if it's in the second round, I think that's quality asset management and asset allocation, where you're going ahead and taking a risk on a guy where you're betting on traits, but it's not doing it in the first round at a position of need. You're, so to speak, reaching at a position of need, but not in the most premium round. So that's where I can wrap my head around it more.
And then, so while I got it here, before I hand you back over to Greg, 2 things that I am absolutely in love with in mocks, and I guarantee you it will never happen because mocks are actually reality, but I'm in love with Cam Taylor-Britt right now. Getting him like in that third round, maybe fourth round in some of these mocks. He's a guy like, would you be content getting him if you missed out on those first couple of rounds and getting him and maybe double dipping? So my favorite thing to do right now is double dip with Cam Taylor-Britt, Kobe Bryant. And I know you talked about you charting all those Cincinnati. That's another guy I'm a big fan of. And maybe you don't rely on one of those guys to come in and win the job. But if you double dip, which we've seen Brandon Beane be willing to do at a position, that maybe you get one of these guys to be able to take the position over this year, and then you stack that depth in the position. But those 2 guys, I just want to get your opinion on them because I want some confirmation bias on Taylor-Britt before you get out of here. And then because you charted Kobe Bryant with that Cincinnati defense and working for SIS, I would love to hear your opinion on a guy like that too.
Yeah. So the theory-based stuff of waiting for round 3, yeah, it's like I have no idea if he's actually going to be there in round 3, but I love the idea of it, and specifically the double dipping. Like, if you don't get a guy in the first 2 rounds at cornerback, I think it's smarter to double dip because there's no guarantee your third round
lottery
ticket is going to hit. Yeah, it's a lottery ticket at that point. Like Spencer Brown hitting, that's a lottery ticket hitting. Like, you don't expect a guy from Northern Iowa to hit in the 3rd round, but it did. So you kind of want to hedge your bets against that, and you saw the Bills do that by drafting Tommy Doyle, another smaller school guy, but still hedging their bets on that. So I like the idea of that. And with Cam Taylor-Britt, I mean, it's athleticism, it's physicality and run support, but also ball skills. Like, he's someone who also displays that reactive athleticism and recovery athleticism, where when he's wrong, he can make himself right, but he doesn't make himself wrong all that much. He's pretty sound. His worst game that I saw was that Oklahoma game, but every game other than that, it made that Oklahoma game look like an outlier. So that was really, really encouraging. Yeah, I love him in run support and his physicality. And then added bonus with him, especially in this double dip fashion, if he doesn't work out and you do double dip at cornerback, you might have yourself a replacement at safety when you move on from Micah Hyde and Porter.
I didn't even think about that.
So I really like that idea of double dipping on cornerback with one of them having safety flex. And then Kobe Bryant is an interesting guy. I thought he tested a little bit poorer than what he plays like on tape. He seems very smooth on tape. Sometimes can get beat with insufficient change of direction skills, but he's really sticky in coverage, plays well in off man, gets a little bit beat in press man, where you kind of see that change of direction get the better of him. Like, if someone's got a good release package, he's physical enough to get a hand on you, but if he doesn't get that hand on you, the change of direction will leave him kind of playing from behind. And his athleticism shows enough to play from behind and use that reactive athleticism, or recovery athleticism, I should say, in this point. But I love the way he plays through the ball, his ball skills to go and get after it. And then obviously, Jim Thorpe Award winner, cornerback, best cornerback in the nation. So that doesn't come without merit. I mean, he earned that. And furthermore, he earned that because of what Sauce Gardner was able to do. Like, he got all that. He was the Levi Wallace of Cincy. He got
that
all
must
those
be why
targets.
I like him.
He got all those targets because Sauce was driving them his way, and he did a really good job minimizing threats for that Cincy defense. So I like his body of work. I like his size. I like his scheme fit. I like his athleticism. So I think he could fit for the Bills, and I like that 4th round range for him. So yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily. The thing with double dipping is I don't know if I love the idea of double dipping 3rd and 4th round, but I love the 2 players you picked.
Yeah, right.
That's the thing. It's like asset management wise, it's like, I don't know if I love it, but I love those players.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough.
We'll take it. So switching to the next one here, one of the next positions that people are unsure of, and this depends on the kind of player that they're adding. What do you think about some of the top options at wide receiver? This is one of those positions where it's not as top heavy. We don't have the Jamar Chase or the AJ Green or like the top, elite guy at the very top end. But it seems like that next tier is really deep, where it could be any of 6 guys that could go with the first wide receiver off the board, or one of them getting to that pick 25. So who are your favorites out of that group of like 6 to 8 receivers everybody seems to keep debating?
I mean, my favorites are Garrett Wilson and Drake London, but I think neither will fall to the Bills. And I think no one thinks Drake London is a fit for the Bills. I feel like I'm the only one who thinks the Bills could find a way to make him fit.
Would you think it like as a big slot?
Like a big slot, but I think he has versatility to be more than a big slot. I think the way he can win throughout just about every portion of his route, like he can win at the release point with his hand usage to keep his body clean. He doesn't necessarily have the speed to stack defenders and get behind them, but he can stay even with them and then beat them at the catch point because he's just bigger, taller, and can jump higher. So I love that about him. I mean, I've been trying to bang the table that he separates in a unique way. And yeah, he might not separate like a Jamison Williams does because he doesn't have like 4.2 speed or whatever, but he separates. Separation comes in plenty of different forms, and he can do it.
We talked about it in Cole Beasley versus Jamison Crowder.
Exactly.
They both get open. They don't get open the same way.
Exactly. So I think he could fit. And the reason I think he could fit is for the same reason the Bills did work on Evan Ingram. I think it's the same idea as getting a quasi tight end, big slot kind of guy. Drake London is that to me, who could also operate on the boundary and win some contested catches, or I don't know. He's pretty sufficient in his quick area speed and getting open on little quick slants. Like, people don't think of that when you think of Drake London. I comp him to Mike Evans a lot, and people are like, "Oh, you said Mike Evans, like he's just a contested catch dude," but he's more than that. He's more than a contested catch guy, and so is Mike Evans. They separate in unique ways that are unique to their body types.
So how about with the two? I know you obviously prefer Wilson. How do you differentiate between the Ohio State receivers?
My thing with Wilson, I have Wilson over Olave. Olave is my wide receiver 3, and Wilson's my wide receiver 1. The reason I have Wilson higher is because I think he's a crisper route runner. I just like his nuance in his route running. He just knows how to set people up, and like the pace of how he runs routes. He's very slow and deceptive sometimes, or he can speed it up to 100 throughout the entire route, or just pick and choose when to do so. And then he's got really strong hands. He has some concentration drops, but other than that, like when it's not happening, you can see just how strong the hands are. You see guys like make those catches. Diggs does this all the time. When he comes back on those hitch routes and he's catching the ball way out in front of him, so the CB has no chance to get to the catch point. And you see Garrett Wilson do that a lot. So I love that. And then what differentiates Wilson from Olave the most, more than the route running piece, because I think Olave and Wilson are pretty similar in that route running component. The biggest difference is run after the catch. Garrett Wilson is so much more creative with the ball in his hands, the way he makes people miss with elusiveness and speed, whereas Olave is just making people miss because he threatens pursuit angles because he's just so fast. Wilson has both of those.
So obviously talk about run after the catch and that elusiveness. I can't get the idea of Jameson Williams and Josh Allen just having contests of saying, I bet you cannot throw me. Oh yeah, I bet you cannot run this. Yeah. And just trying to outdo each other over and over again. Obviously, we don't know how the ACL recovery is going to impact his draft stock. I get the impression that if he had not gotten hurt at all, he might be pressing for that kind of Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle range of the draft and being a top 5 or 6 pick. What did you see when you watched him play?
I really like Jameson Williams, but I am way lower on him than most. He's my wide receiver 5, and people get on me about it, man. I like him a lot, but I question his route running because, and it's really not even his fault too. I question his route running because of how he was used at Alabama. He was used as the deep threat. He was used as the guy to, hey, take the top off this defense and make them fear you to open up everything else for this offense, a la John Mechie. So it's really tough to evaluate him in that way, but I didn't see enough from his route running in terms of nuance and how he sets up corners and how he manipulates them to get open in the short and intermediate area, where I just saw him running deep overs, deep crosses, 9 routes, all of that stuff, where I was just left questioning, what is he as a route runner? Is he just a separator because he's fast, or is he a separator because he's deceptive? And I keep coming back to just because he's fast. That doesn't mean he can't grow at all. Like, he 100% can grow, and I have confidence that Chad Hall could help him grow.
Yeah, let him hang out with Stefon Diggs for a summer.
Exactly. All of that stuff would help. So I can't deny that he would fit the Bills, and I would be ecstatic if the Bills did it. But I value that route running component, and I value route running or separation via route running as the most important form of separation, because I think it's the most sustainable at the next level. And I think that doesn't make sense with my Drake London analysis, but I think it makes sense for what you're going to extrapolate to the next level. If you're just a good route runner, it's going to be easier to separate at the next level than just being faster than the dude you're lining up across from, because dudes are going to be faster at the next level. So that's my only concern with him, but he can 100% grow. And I love the idea of him in this offense, especially because it seems more and more realistic because of that injury.
So who's your favorite out of that next group here, whether it's Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, out of that kind of next jumble where
Burks,
do you have a
Treylon
Traylon Burks, or do you have like a defined line after that top 5, or does it still kind of blend into the next 6 to 8 range?
So my top 5 ends at Williams, and I actually have Dotson over Williams. Dotson would be my favorite of that group. I really like Jahan Dotson because of the reason I just said. He's got that route running component where I just feel like it's so reliable that it will translate to the next level. His hands too. I think he's got the best hands in this class.
So wait, size does matter? Hands and size?
A little bit. It's part of the game.
Right.
No, but a big part of it is that size thing. He plays bigger than his size. He's 5'10", 178, I believe. He plays bigger than that. He's not like seeking contact or anything, but he's not afraid of contact. My biggest gripe with him is, for as fast as he is, he runs like a 4.42. When you're 5'10", 178, you kind of want someone to be faster and more dynamic with the ball in his hands. And he's not the best with the ball in his hands. He's not all that creative. He's kind of like the Chris Olave in that regards, where he's threatening dudes with the pursuit angles, just destroying pursuit angles with speed more than being elusive and juking people and spinning and all of that stuff. He doesn't have all that, but he's very nuanced in his route running component. So I think that translates very well to the next level. My actual next tier, because Dotson fell into that first tier for me, Sky Moore. I love Sky Moore from Western Michigan. The fact that he's only played the position for 2 years and he's as polished as he is as a route runner at the release point, he's very confident in his hands. Everything is so confident for a guy that's only played the position for 2 years, just tells me that there's so much more potential than what was already showed. And he has such a limited route tree at Western Michigan, because I swear to God, they ran RPOs like 85% of the time. And he was just running like hitch routes, then blocking. So when he was asked to actually run routes, you could see that crispness, the nuance to set up opponents, the ability to release in different ways with suddenness and clear with his hand usage. All of it is there, and the fact that it's all there only 2 years into playing the position is very encouraging to me. So I'm kind of hoping that Sky Moore drops to 57. There's a lot of buzz around him, and I don't know if it's even going to happen.
Yeah, so similar to sort of the question I was asking about, like the Cam Taylor Britts and the Kobe Bryants of the cornerback room, I want to get your take on some guys that I like that maybe aren't that first round range, but guys like Calvin Austin, guys like Velus Jones Jr., who I love. But when you talk about him, I want your opinion on, does his age matter in this draft? Because that's the one thing I keep hearing is like, well, he's too old and you can't draft him, but I love the player. And then and then like an Alec Pierce, I know you did Cincinnati. I don't know if you did the offensive side of the ball in scouting.
Yeah.
You talk about those three guys. Those are guys that I really like, that I'd be happy to walk away with if the first round doesn't work out and they do go corner round one, and you still need to fill this room.
So I'll start with Calvin Austin. I'm really wishy-washy on like where to draft Calvin Austin. I'm not sure if I'm fully confident in doing it at 57, but I really like the player. So like if the Bills went ahead and did it, I'd love it. But personally, when I'm doing mock drafts, every time I hit 57, I'm like, I don't know if this is worth it. So I'm really struggling to place him in terms of round grading, because I don't even grade based on round. But either way, Calvin Austin, super fast, dynamic player with the ball in his hands, but he's way more than just a gadget dude, which is what I think a lot of people think when they see him, because he's, what is it, like 5'7", 170 or something?
Yeah, feels like McKenzie, right?
Yeah, a lot of people are assuming, oh, why do we need that? We already have McKenzie.
Right.
The nuance of receiving skill is the difference.
Exactly. And he played on the outside for Memphis. Like he had more outside reps than slot reps for Memphis. And that's what's real. Exactly. You don't. He's 5'7", 170. Why would you guess that? But he's honestly kind of thicker for that 5'7" build, which helps with what you can do with the ball in your hands after the catch. Low center of gravity, all that stuff helps with contact balance. But tested out of the roof. I mean, 4.32 40-yard dash, 99th percentile with just about every speed thing, over 90th percentile with every agility thing, and over 90th percentile for every explosion. So Literally anything that's holding him back is all size related. Goes back to size, doesn't matter. But with Calvin Austin, it is that nuance. It's the fact that my only gripe with him is he's going to be pressed at the next level just because of that size. But he's shown on multiple occasions that he has the suddenness and the shimmy shake ability at the line of scrimmage to move his torso and move his chest plate enough where he doesn't get hit with those punches at the press, and it doesn't hamper his route at all. And he's very nuanced in his route running for someone that you would assume is just a manufactured touches type of guy. So all of that is very encouraging stuff with Calvin Austin, and he'll even give you some stuff in the return game, which is obviously something we'd all like to have some more consistency with. Yeah, this is a great comp with him. I comp Wan'Dale Robinson and Calvin Austin to Rondale Moore. I feel like they're very similar, but Calvin Austin he's more than what Rondale Moore showed that Rondale Moore was this first year. Cause this first year, Rondale just showed the manufactured touches stuff. So I want to say that Calvin can be more than that. And I honestly think Rondale can be more than that, but to each their own. Moving on. Who is the next one here? Alec Pierce and Velus. So I'll start with Velus. So with Velus Jones, the age thing, I don't care. Like the Bills are in a Super Bowl window. The Bills are in a Super Bowl window. Who cares what age you are? And furthermore, if you're 25 years old right now and you're a rookie deals are what, 4 years long, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, besides first round picks.
He's going to be 29 when his deal expires. That means his rookie deal is hypothetically going to be in his prime years of NFL football.
Good point.
And if you do want to re-sign him, he's hitting the market for the first time at 29 years old. You think he's going to get a big payday? I think if anything, it's the opposite side of the coin with the Tremaine Edmonds argument. Tremaine Edmonds hits the market at 25 and you're like, oh, this is a young dude with upside, a lot of potential. You're paying for upside. With Velus Jones, when he hits the market at 29, you're paying for what he is. You already know what he is. He's 29 years old. So that's where
on the flip side of that, do you have any concern that, of course, he looked good. He was a 24-year-old playing against college kids.
Sure.
No, because that Tennessee offense was annoying. Like that Tennessee offense was like, it didn't get nearly enough out of him that it could have. Like he was asked to run quick slants, wheel routes, and some hitch routes. His route tree is really limited just because of what Tennessee asked him to do. But the Senior Bowl quieted a lot of those route tree concerns for me. I thought he was really solid at the Senior Bowl with his nuance to route running. So
and another return potential guy.
Yes. SEC co-player of the year, might not have even been co-player of the year for special teams. So yeah, that's an immediate plug and play. Like if they draft him, it's more or less a statement on Marquez Stevenson. Like he's not the returner anymore if we're taking Velus Jones. Alec Pierce. So with Alec Pierce, it's really just that freak athleticism. Like, dude is 6'3", 211 pounds, long arms, former volleyball player, can jump out of the gym, and you can see it on all of those contested catches. Desmond Ridder trusted him so much in contested catch scenarios. Like any single time that they were one-on-one deep down the field, it didn't matter. He didn't view it as 50-50. He viewed it as 75% chance my guy's coming down with the football. My only thing with him, and this isn't even a weakness with him, this is just his only deficiency. I think he's super, super well-rounded. I think his only area that he could stand to really grow and he needs to prove more in is his route running. He's very sharp with his cuts in route running, and he knows how to leverage corners and find soft spots and zones and do all of that nuanced stuff. But it's just a little bit clunky sometimes just because he's bigger bodied. And it's literally just that. But he also shows the ability to bend at the top of the route and get low and sink his hips and make a deep, sharp cut on dig routes. So it's really tough to say that it's a weakness for him. But for someone at 6'3", 211 pounds, that's probably going to be his biggest barrier or like largest hill to climb moving forward. But I love the player. He's got a lot of upside, great hands. and he can be used in multiple ways. Cincinnati used him as like a Gabe Davis in a lot of ways, as that quasi tight end where they motioned him into an inline tight end and had him block. Sometimes he played big slot, and he also played on the boundary. So I love his versatility, and I love that he could probably contribute day one, but he wouldn't have to. Greg, you pulled a Greg.
Oh, you're muted, my man. Damn.
So as we go through our next big position here, was our interior offensive lineman. And obviously, that shifted a little bit after they matched the Rick Bates offer. But, one, Bates is still on a low-value deal and has the versatility to back up multiple spots. We know that we have the risk. Mitch Morris has played fantastic. He hasn't missed very many games at all, but we know the concussion history. Roger Saffold is on a one-year deal and is 33, turning 34. So I still think there's a pretty high priority in needing to add interior offensive line. Who are your favorites in that range?
Zion Johnson. I'm just hoping he falls to 25, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't even know what I would do if he fell to 25. Like, that's such a tough proposition, because if you draft him, is he starting over Ryan Bates? Or that's the competition that you have. Like, then Ryan Bates goes into that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Ryan Bates, the contract that he signed to, that's a fine price for a depth piece. And then moving forward, he could be your starter next year if you're moving on from Saffold. So it's very interesting to think about, like, asset allocation when you think about interior offensive line, knowing that we probably feel comfortable with Bates and Saffold being the starters. But that sample size thing with Bates leaves me questioning, what are we really going to get from Bates this year? And is he going to be a quality starter? So, yeah, if Zion Johnson is on the board, I'm going to have a really tough time passing on him. He's just so solid in just about every area. But the only area that I have concerns is his hand usage in terms of where he's landing his punches. Sometimes he'll land a little bit high or even get so wide that he's essentially bear hugging his dude. But what's so encouraging is that he wins regardless. Like, I compare this to Greg Rousseau. When Greg Rousseau won in college, he had no pass rush plan. He had no repertoire. He was just winning with length, strength, and athleticism. There was no plan, but he was still winning. And that's encouraging, because that tells you
can teach the rest, right?
There's so much untapped potential if you teach the rest and you polish and round off those rough edges. And it's the same thing with Zion Johnson, but there's only one rough edge. There's only one thing you need to clean up, but it's a really important thing for interior offensive linemen. Hand usage is a huge thing for offensive linemen. So it's concerning to an extent, but the fact that he's still winning without it, it's kind of nuts. So yeah, give me Zion Johnson at 25, and we can address the other needs later, because at the end of the day, the future of interior, or I guess the future of the two guard positions, is still up in the air. So
yeah, and protecting Josh Allen's priority number one, no matter what we're doing.
Exactly. So I'm not taking it off the table in round one yet.
And in that round one sort of conversation, I've seen some mocks where it's Kenyon Green and is sitting there, and it's sort of, you either really like the guy or you're kind of staying away from him. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, I actually really liked Kenyon Green's tape. And the thing I actually like most about him, it's less about his game and more about his fit on the team, is the fact that the Bills need a guard and a tackle. He fills both. He's flexible to play both tackle and guard. You fill that need if you want to find a guy, if you want to double dip here, right? If you want to find a guy that can play guard and tackle, and if you want to find a guy that can play guard and center, you get Kenyon Green now, and you find another guy later in the draft.
Get a Cam
so
Jordan,
I really,
maybe?
Exactly. So I like the idea of that. But furthermore, on the player aspect, he's surprisingly athletic. He didn't test well at all. Like, I'm telling you, when he tested, I was expecting to watch his tape, because I didn't watch him until after the combine. I was expecting his tape to be sloppy in regards to like reactive athleticism and how he was mirroring those defensive linemen. But he was keeping up with those dudes. He had good hand usage, really heavy hands, and he was just really strong at the point of attack every single time. He didn't allow anything to get by him. He was always the dude keeping the line of scrimmage where it was or reestablishing it into the defense. So that was always encouraging. And then Isaiah Spiller just always knew who to run behind in that Texas A&M offense. He always ran behind Kenyon Green, and he always found holes doing it. So yeah, Kenyon Green is a mauler in the run game. And I suppose the only thing is going to be his footwork or quickness with his footwork in the passing game. Is he going to be fleet of foot enough on the interior to deal with guys like Chris Jones and DeForest Buckner, those powerful dudes on the interior, but they're pretty fleet of foot for guys that play on the defensive interior. So it's a morphing position in the NFL now. Those guards have to be strong, but they also have to be somewhat fleet of foot. So that's my only concern with Kenyon Green. If he can clean up that footwork, I think he's golden.
Any other guys do you think are in range at 25 that's worth that? Or maybe if not, who are the guys you like at 57?
Yeah, I don't think anyone else would really be worth it. I wonder if Linderbaum's going to fall just because people don't value centers, but I don't even know if the Bills would value him because there have been a lot of conversations about if he can even play guard. So kind of long and short discussion on Tyler Linderbaum. Good player, but I don't even know if he can play guard. So I don't know if the Bills will even give him a proper looking to. So at 57, the dude I'm falling in love with is Dylan Parham from Memphis. I really, really like Dylan Parham from the perspective of balance and body control. Dude just plays a really fluid football game. He seems to be very in control. When I scout interior offensive linemen, it's a position that I definitely need to work on with scouting. But the main thing that I watch is how much is this guy falling on the ground? Because there's a lot of traffic around
the Jordan
you.
Mills metric is what we call it, I think.
Yeah, that and the turnstile stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're not falling on the ground, you got good balance and you got good footwork. And it's hard to do when there's a lot of bodies falling around you. So having good wherewithal and body control and I guess awareness of everything going on around you is very important, especially on that interior position because you're in the middle of it all. But good body control, really good in the run game because he's quick out of his stance. And that quickness shows not only out of his stance, but also his range to climb to the second level on zone runs. If the Bills ever get to the point where they're actually going to have a proper running back to run outside zone, he'd be excellent with that. So I like that, especially with the addition of Aaron Cromer. If we get to outside zone stuff, I think Dylan Parham would be great there. The only thing is strength at the point of attack in the passing game. He's a lot better when he's the aggressor, when he's going to meet the guy instead of letting the guy come to him and then kind of absorbing that momentum and then anchoring down. He definitely has to work in that regard a little bit. It's not a weakness, but that's probably an area that could use some growth for him. And then something I love about him is the fact that he can play center. It's something he's already done. And if the Bills decide to move on from Mitch Morse in 2 to 3 years, you already have the replacement on the roster if you draft Dylan Parham, because he can come in, he can day one be a guard, but then in 2 to 3 years, he can move in and be your center. So I really like that versatility from him.
Would Cam Jurgens give you that same type of versatility?
He would, but I don't know about guard yet. I mean, I haven't seen him play guard, but I do really like Cam Jurgens from the same aspect of the athleticism stuff. And then the difference with Cam Jurgens, I just love the nastiness he plays with. Anytime he sees someone a little bit off balance or just a big target to hit, he's always trying to get his man on the dirt. Like, he is so hungry and has an appetite for finishing his blocks. And that's something that the Bills have kind of been missing. And we got that a little bit from John Feliciano, that nastiness. And we kind of need that back. We need
a Richie. We need a Richie.
It's that kind of vibe, though. You need something like that. You need that presence on the interior of the offensive line. You need someone who's going to play with that chip on their shoulder. And Cam Jurgens plays with that. But not only that, he has athleticism to couple with that. So I like that too. He's someone that plays center now, and hopefully if he adds a little bit of weight, he could be a guard right away and then has that center moving forward. So
sort of a nasty dude. Chris Paul, would he be in line with that sort of like big, nasty, mauling type guy? Or
the thing with Chris Paul is I don't have a body of work. I only have one game, and it's tough for me to extrapolate a body of work with one game of watching him at tackle and then saying he's going to be a baller guard. because I just don't know. But the things I gathered from him, like you can see the athleticism, the way he can use his feet to go and pass set and meet edges around the edge is very encouraging from someone you're projecting to play guard, but he can do that in a pinch and play tackle. It's the same kind of thing with Kenyon Green. It's like, okay, he has that guard tackle flex. That's very encouraging. He's not someone, I actually remember I charted a Tulsa game earlier this year and I charted Chris Paul for like 5 blown blocks. And at that moment entering draft season, I was like, never am I thinking of Chris Paul as a tackle. And then I watched his game with an actual critical eye on Chris Paul. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good. This is good stuff. That game could have just been an outlier. So I like Chris Paul. I like the athleticism. I like his mauling presence to an extent, but I need more tape on him if I'm going to give him a proper evaluation.
So now outside of those, obviously that's the top priority positions that everybody's focused on, but there's a couple other areas that could go. Who are some of your top guys outside of those top 3 positions that you still would be interested in at pick 25 if they were to get there at maybe a non-obvious position?
That's really tough because I have been very limited in my approach to, I guess, enhancing my bust capability by just focusing on positional need. But, man, after
running back round 1 is your thing?
No, I can't. I don't draw a line in the sand on that, but based on my evaluation of running backs this year, I don't think any of them deserve a round 1 selection this year. Like last year, I liked Najee Harris and Travis Etienne more than any of the guys, the top 3 guys this year. And even last year, I was a little bit wishy-washy on it, but I was more okay and I could wrap my head around it. That being said, if it happens this year, I'll wrap my head around it. I think I'm thinking Jordan Davis. I don't think he's going to fall, but I think I'm thinking Jordan Davis. The prevailing thought to this is Daquan Jones does not stop you from drafting Jordan Davis. Like, Jordan Davis is a transcendent generational talent. You don't want to pass up on that if it's available for a team that still needs a presence on the interior long-term. There is nothing long-term or sustainable about Daquan Jones. I'm very happy with his signing, and I like what he's going to bring this year and next year possibly. But what is there beyond that? And Jordan Davis answers those questions. So there's obviously been a lot of talk about him being a 2-down player, and I was in that camp heavy. I was heavy in that camp. But then I watched more and more and more tape on him, and you can see that day 1, he probably will be just a 2-down player, but he has all of the potential in the world to be a 3-down animal. Like, he has pass rushing, I don't want to say moves, but acumen. He can push the pocket. He has proper hand usage. He has heavy hands, and he can punish teams for leaving him one-on-one with anyone on the interior. And that creates a bunch of havoc for offensive game planners when you're thinking, who do I double team, Ed Oliver or Jordan Davis? So,
or Von Miller.
Exactly. So all of that, it makes it really, really intriguing. We talked about it on the Air Raid Hour on Monday, and I like, if it happened, I'd have a fit. It's almost like a similar kind of thing with Zion Johnson. It's like, it's not my number 1 priority, but sometimes you got to trust BPA. And that's one of those situations where I don't know if the Bills could pass on Jordan Davis at 25.
Interesting. So obviously everybody listening, you guys see how much work Kendall puts in, what a great follow he is. Make sure you're checking him out. He's on all kinds of shows. You see him on the Film Room all the time with Anthony Prohaska and Eric Turner. He jumps on the Air Raid Hour. He was on Disguised Coverage earlier today.
He'll be back here too.
Yeah, we'll bring him back on with us here to be able to get you guys ready. Make sure you're giving him a follow. We appreciate your time very much, Kendall. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks for doing double duty tonight, man.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Kendall.
See you guys.
So obviously, I think this was a great way to go in. Obviously, we got to break down the Stefon Diggs contract, talk about some of the different pieces that are floating out there, all the different ways we can still create some cap space, and then going through some of those, top needs of what we have here. As we kind of shift gears, we're now going to get into bringing on some other guests as we go forward and other guys we want to bring in, and we'll get into some mock drafts, be able to go through some of these exercises. We're really excited about it. So, Aaron, any final thoughts for the people?
Yeah, no, one thing I was saying, our friend Pat Moran, I was doing his podcast the other day, and I'm really happy the way we laid out this offseason, you and I, Greg, because this time he asked me if I was burnt out on draft stuff, and I'm burnt out on some of the takes on Twitter for sure, but in terms of like the work, no, because we spent so much time in the free agent, pool and that sort of pro scouting mentality.
I'm never going back.
And for good reason. I think we did a pretty good job, to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. I thought we did a pretty good job with the, free agents, the kind of players the Bills were looking for. And then it was a perfect amount of time to start to get into the draft stuff. And, I feel really good right now about where we are in the draft. And this is really crunch time here the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft. So that's really where I'm at. I'm still very excited about the prospects, listening to Kendall talk, some of the guys I want to go look at a little bit deeper now as we get to that process. So I urge people, don't jump head first into the draft as the offseason approaches, because it feels to me a little bit better to kind of dive in a little slowly and take that time, because it's a longer period of time between the end of the season and when draft starts up. And there's so much good content out there now, not just our guys here at Cover One, but so many people are putting out great draft content that you really can catch up and do it. So I'm excited to see where the next 3 weeks go as we lead up to go into the draft, and I get to see your handsome face in person and that content we're going to create. So I got a real excitement for the next month of content coming up.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I'm really happy the way we scheduled and the way we've gone about it. And I think an intense 5 or 6 weeks is perfect to be able to dive in and to go full go. And it's been a really good exercise for us here. So again, the chat was awesome tonight. You guys were incredible as usual. It was awesome to be able to talk through this. Great guest with Kendall. Awesome news to be able to break down the Stefon Diggs contract. It was just a great time to be able to be together. So, it's fantastic. So I appreciate you guys very, very much. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.